The stars vanished over New York as the massive ships moved into position. One by one, city by city, the same scene played out across Earth. It was just after dawn in Beijing, midnight in London, and early evening in Mexico City when the Draconian armada arrived without warning. 500 warships, each nearly the size of Manhattan, blocked the sun in some regions and lit up the night sky in others. Their hulls were dark metal with red glowing lines that pulsed like blood through veins. The world stood still, watching. Commander Susan Miller had been asleep when the call came. Now she stood in Earth Defense Headquarters beneath the Rocky Mountains, her dark hair hastily pulled back, eyes fixed on the massive display screen showing the alien vessels surrounding Earth. "How many?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. 500 capital ships, Commander," said Alan Wright, his fingers flying across his communication panel. "And they're launching smaller craft. Thousands of them." Susan nodded. Humanity had only begun reaching for the stars. Their Mars colony housed just 3,000 people. Their deepest space vessel had barely reached Saturn. They had nothing that could match this force. "Any response to our hails?" she asked. "None." "Commander, wait." Alan pressed his earpiece closer. "We're getting something now." The main screen flickered and a face appeared that made several officers gasp. The creature had scaled skin in deep green and bronze patterns. Its eyes were amber with vertical pupils. A ridge of spines ran along its head instead of hair. When it opened its mouth to speak, 2 rows of sharp teeth gleamed. "People of Earth," the creature said in perfect English, "I am Admiral Krauze-Thule of the Draconian Empire. Your world is now under our control. You will surrender immediately or face extinction." Susan stepped forward. "This is Commander Miller of Earth's Unified Defense. We are a peaceful planet and have no quarrel with your empire. We request diplomatic talks." The Draconian's laugh was like stones grinding together. "There is nothing to discuss. Our predictive models show humanity's potential. Unchecked, your species will threaten the established order within 3 centuries. The Empire does not allow threats to develop." Behind Susan, Lieutenant John Carter whispered to Dr. Lisa Adams, "They're afraid of what we might become?" Lisa nodded slightly. "Seems like poor justification for genocide." Susan kept her focus on the alien admiral. "We request communication with the Galactic Council. Surely unprovoked extinction of an emerging species violates interstellar law." Something flickered across the Draconian's face. Surprise, perhaps. "The Council observes but does not interfere in Imperial security matters. You have 48 Earth hours to surrender. After that we begin planetary bombardment." The screen went dark. Susan turned to her team. "Options? We have 300 orbital defense satellites," said Lieutenant Carter, a tall man with short brown hair and determined eyes. "Conventional missiles, a few experimental energy weapons. Against their technology, it's like bringing knives to a nuclear fight. Their ships must have some weakness," Susan insisted. Lisa Adams, Earth's leading xenobiologist, spoke up. Her red hair was tied back tightly, her freckled face serious. "Something's not right. The biological readings we're getting from their ships don't match known data about Draconians." "Explain," Susan said. Lisa pulled up charts on her tablet. "According to the information shared by the Galactic Council's observation team last year, Draconians require higher oxygen levels and temperatures than humans, but these ships show environmental settings much closer to our norms." John Carter moved to his station. "Commander, I'm noticing unusual patterns in their communication signals. There's a secondary channel buried under the main broadcasts." "Can you access it?" Susan asked. "Working on it. It's encrypted, but—" His voice trailed off as his fingers danced across his keyboard. "Got something. It's fragmentary, but it appears to be communications between their ships. They sound concerned." Susan leaned over his shoulder. "About what?" "Us," John said, looking up with surprise. "They're discussing contingency plans if their bluff doesn't work." "Bluff?" Susan repeated. Alan joined them. "Commander, we're getting signals from the Galactic Council now. They're positioning observation vessels at the edge of our solar system. but maintain they cannot interfere. Susan straightened. Put them through. A different alien appeared on screen, this one with bluish skin and large compound eyes. Commander Miller, I am Observer Trelna. The Council acknowledges your situation but cannot intervene in what the Draconians classify as a security operation. They're threatening to destroy our planet, Susan said, a regrettable but established practice. New species are assessed for potential threat. Those deemed dangerous are contained or removed, the Observer replied calmly. And you allow this? The Empire controls 30% of known space, Commander. The Council cannot challenge their authority directly. After the communication ended, Susan gathered her core team. We need a plan, something they won't expect. What about the quantum communication array? Alan suggested. It's still experimental, but it operates on principles the Draconians may not understand. Dr. Adams nodded. Earth's magnetic field has unique properties. If we channel the quantum signal through the planetary field lines, we might disrupt their systems enough to buy time. How long would disruption last? Susan asked. Minutes, or most, John said. But that might be enough to show them we're not defenseless. For the next 36 hours, they worked without stopping. Around the world, military forces prepared, knowing they stood little chance. Civilians huddled in homes or flooded religious buildings. News broadcasts showed the alien ships, hovering like death itself. In her rare quiet moment, Susan stood at the window of her office looking at the mountains outside. She wondered if they would still exist tomorrow. The deadline approached. Susan took her position in the command center. All defense satellites in position, John reported. Planetary defense forces standing by, Alan added. Quantum array charged. To maximum, Lisa confirmed. Above them, the Draconian ships began to move into attack formation. Smaller craft poured from the larger vessels like angry insects from disturbed hives. They're charging weapons, John announced, his voice tight. Susan took a deep breath. Begin countermeasures. Activate the quantum array. Lisa pressed her hand against the scanner. The massive device beneath the facility hummed to life, channeling energy through Earth's magnetic fields. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, Alan shouted, "Look at the screens!" The Draconian ships began to shimmer as if seen through water. The effect spread rapidly from vessel to vessel. What's happening? Susan demanded. The quantum field is interacting with their ships somehow, Lisa said, eyes wide. This isn't just communication disruption. The shimmer intensified. The ships seemed to stretch, then compress. John's console erupted with alerts. They're broadcasting distress calls, he said. Something about dimensional instability. Before their eyes, the massive Draconian fleet began to fade, becoming transparent, then vanishing entirely. Ship after ship disappeared until, within minutes, Earth's skies were clear again. Where 500 warships had threatened extinction, now there was nothing but empty space. Silence fell over the command center. Then cheers erupted, people hugging and crying with relief. But Susan didn't join the celebration. She stood staring at the screens, her mind racing ahead. What did we just do? She whispered to Lisa. I don't know, the scientist admitted. But I don't think they're destroyed. They're somewhere else. And they'll want to come back, Susan said grimly. Alan's voice cut through the noise. Commander, we're being hailed. It's the Galactic Council. And others. Hundreds of signals coming in from across the galaxy. Susan straightened her uniform and steeled herself. Earth had just become the center of galactic attention, and she had a feeling their troubles were only beginning. Put them through, she said. Let's find out what happens when you make an entire armada disappear. 6 months passed since the Draconian fleet vanished. Earth had changed. People looked up at the stars differently now. Not with wonder, but with worry. Commander Susan Miller, now Admiral Miller, stood in the newly expanded Earth Defense Headquarters. Screens covered the walls, showing ships from 20 different alien species now orbiting Earth at a cautious distance. None dared come closer after what happened to the Draconians. Another communication from the Rigellian Republic. said Alan Wright, who had barely slept in months. They're demanding access to our dimensional weapon. Susan sighed. Send the same response as before. Earth has no weapons of that nature. It wasn't entirely a lie. They still didn't understand what had happened that day. The quantum array had been designed to send messages, not make entire fleets disappear. The doors slid open and Dr. Lisa Adams hurried in. Her eyes were bright with excitement. We found something, she said, placing her tablet on the central table. The energy readings from where the Draconians vanished. They're not random. John Carter joined them, looking over Lisa's shoulder. It's a pattern? More than that, Lisa said. It's a signature like an address. Susan leaned forward. You're saying we know where they went? Not exactly, Lisa replied. But we know they went somewhere specific. Not just destroyed. They were transported. Alan looked up from his station. That matches what I've been picking up. Very faint signals, almost hidden in background radiation. Not coming from space, but from elsewhere. Elsewhere? Susan asked. Another dimension, Lisa said. A parallel reality. Susan rubbed her temples. This was beyond her training. She had joined Earth's defense forces to protect against terrorists and rogue states, not to deal with interdimensional incidents. Can we bring them back? She asked finally. John and Lisa exchanged glances. Possibly, John said. But should we? They came to destroy us. Before Susan could answer, an alert sounded. Alan's hands moved across his panel. Priority message from the Galactic Council, he announced. The Inquisitor's ship has entered the solar system. Susan straightened her uniform. Prepare the diplomatic chamber, and tell Paul to get ready. The Galactic Council's ship was smaller than the Draconian vessels had been, but still impressive. A gleaming silver structure that seemed to flow like liquid metal. It carried Inquisitor Zorlak, sent to determine how a primitive planet had defeated the galaxy's greatest military power. In the diplomatic chamber, Susan stood with Paul Johnson, Earth's lead negotiator. He was a calm man with steady hands and a voice that could soothe angry crowds. They would need his skills today. The air shimmered, and 3 figures appeared. The central one was tall and thin with pale blue skin that seemed almost translucent. Its eyes were entirely black, showing no whites or pupils. Inquisitor Zorlak, Susan said with a small bow. Earth welcomes you. Admiral Miller, the alien replied. Its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The Council requires answers. We will provide what information we can, Paul said smoothly. The Inquisitor studied him. The Draconian Empire has lost 10 million soldiers and their finest warships. They demand retribution. They came to destroy us, Susan pointed out. We defended ourselves. With technology beyond your development level, countered the Inquisitor. Our records show Earth has not achieved dimensional manipulation capabilities. We don't fully understand what happened, Lisa admitted, joining them with data tablets. The quantum array was designed for communication, not transportation. The Inquisitor seemed unimpressed. The Council has sent me to investigate all possibilities, including that Earth may harbor ancient technology. This caught Susan by surprise. Ancient technology? Several Council species believe this planet once hosted a civilization far older than any in the current galactic community, the Inquisitor explained. Their technology may still exist beneath your surface. In a private room later, Susan gathered her team. Ancient aliens? John asked skeptically. Buried under Earth? It would explain a lot, Lisa said thoughtfully. The quantum array was built over a site with unusual mineral formations. We thought they were natural. A signal interrupted them. Alan answered, then turned with wide eyes. You need to see this, he said. Now, on his screen was a garbled image breaking up with static, but the face was unmistakable. Admiral Krazathul of the Draconian fleet. Repeat. Earth forces, hear us. The message broke into static again. Trapped, under attack. The transmission ended abruptly. Can we track it? Susan asked. Alan shook his head. It's not coming from anywhere in our space, but the quantum frequency matches our array. They're reaching out from the other dimension, Lisa realized. Before they could discuss further, alarms blared. A different alien ship had broken through Earth's perimeter without permission. It bore Draconian markings but was smaller than their warships. They're requesting to land, Alan reported. One passenger only, Vice Admiral Sissis Thar. Susan's jaw tightened. Let them land. Heavy security. Vice Admiral Sisthar was even more intimidating in person than on screen, taller than any human, with scales like burnished bronze and eyes that glowed faintly in shadow. You will return our fleet, the Draconian demanded without greeting. We don't know how to bring them back, Susan said honestly. The Draconian's tail lashed angrily. Then you will give us your weapon technology. It wasn't a weapon, Lisa tried to explain. It was an accident. Lies, Sisithar hissed. The Draconian Empire does not believe in such convenient accidents. You activated ancient technology against us. Paul stepped forward. Vice Admiral, we are conducting research to understand what happened. If we can return your people safely, we will. The Draconian studied him, then Susan. The Empire has sent another fleet, larger than the first. They approach as we speak. Susan felt cold dread. To retrieve your lost ships? To avenge them, Sisthar corrected. They believe you destroyed our armada. They come to do the same to your world. Later that night, in a secret lab beneath the headquarters, Lisa and John worked frantically. The message from Admiral Krazathul played on repeat as they tried to clean up the signal. There, John said, adjusting some settings. Play it now. The message was still broken but clearer. Earth forces. If you hear us, we are trapped in dimensional space, under attack by entities native to this realm. Need assistance. Coordinates follow. Lisa looked at John. They want our help? After they came to destroy us, he said with a bitter laugh. In her office, Susan reviewed reports of the approaching Draconian reinforcements. Thousands of ships, not hundreds. Earth wouldn't survive. We have two options, Olivia Ross, their chief engineer, explained. We can try to duplicate the effect, send this new fleet away too. Or? Susan prompted. We try to bring back the first fleet, Olivia said quietly. The theory is sound. Reverse the polarity of the quantum field, and we might open a doorway. Between dimensions. Susan stared at her. You want to bring back the aliens who tried to kill us? Admiral Krazathul now knows what we can do, John pointed out. And he's asking for help. That changes things. Susan stood at the window, looking at the night sky. Up there, somewhere, the Inquisitor watched. And beyond, the Draconian reinforcements approached bent on revenge. If the lost fleet returns, she said slowly, what's to stop them from joining the attack? Nothing, Lisa admitted. Except what they've experienced there. Whatever's attacking them might have changed their perspective. Susan made her decision. Prepare both options. We'll try to bring them back first. If that fails, we send the new fleet to join them. As she turned from the window, a new alert sounded. The approaching fleet had accelerated. Earth had less time than they thought. The race to save humanity had begun. Admiral Krazathul stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching as another of his fleet's vessels disappeared into the strange darkness that surrounded them. That made 57 ships lost in the 6 months they had been trapped in this place. Status report, he demanded, his scaled hands gripping the rail before him. His second-in-command approached cautiously. The entities are becoming more aggressive, Admiral. They've breached the outer defense perimeter of Sector 7. Krazathul hissed in frustration. When they had first arrived in this strange dimension, the shadowy entities had merely observed them. Now they attacked regularly, their touch causing Draconian technology to fail and organic matter to decay rapidly. And the signal to Earth? He asked. Still transmitting, Admiral, but we cannot confirm they received it. Krazathul turned to look at the view screen, which showed only swirling gray mists beyond their ships. Somewhere out there was real space, Their space. And the planet he had been sent to conquer. The irony does not escape me, he said quietly. We came to destroy them, and now we pray they save us. Back on Earth, the situation grew more desperate by the hour. The Galactic Council had officially withdrawn their Inquisitor from the system upon learning of the approaching Draconian reinforcement fleet. They're abandoning us, Susan said, watching the Inquisitor's ship depart on the main screen. Self-preservation, Paul Johnson replied. The Council won't risk war with the Draconian Empire. Susan gathered her core team in the main control room. Lisa Adams and John Carter had been working around the clock to establish stable communication with the lost fleet. Engineer Olivia Ross and her team had modified the quantum array based on what they had learned. We have 72 hours before the reinforcement fleet arrives, Susan began. Where do we stand? Olivia stepped forward. We've reconfigured the quantum array to create a stable dimensional gateway. In theory, we can open a passage between our dimension and the one where the Draconian fleet is trapped. In theory? Susan asked. We've never done this before, Olivia said with a shrug. No one has. Lisa added. We've partially cleaned up Admiral Krazathul's transmission. He reports entities in that dimension are attacking their ships. They've lost nearly 60 vessels already. So they're weakened, John noted. And desperate, Paul added. That could make them more dangerous, not less. Susan considered this. What about the approaching fleet? Can we use the array against them too? Not both, Olivia explained. The power requirements are enormous. We can open a gateway to bring ships back, or we can create another displacement field to send ships away, not both and not at the same time. Alan Wright interrupted from his communication station. Vice Admiral Sis's Thar is requesting another meeting. He says it's urgent. Susan nodded. Bring him in. When the tall Draconian entered, Susan was struck by the change in his demeanor. Gone was the arrogant conqueror. He moved with caution, his eyes darting around as if expecting an attack. The reinforcement fleet has increased speed, he said without preamble. They will arrive in 48 hours, not 72. Why tell us this? Susan asked. The Draconian's tail twitched nervously. Because I wish to survive, Admiral Miller, and I've learned something that changes everything. Paul stepped closer. What have you learned? The attack on Earth was not authorized by the Empire or the Galactic Council, Sistar said. Admiral Krazathul acted independently, against direct orders. Stunned silence filled the room. Why? Susan finally asked. Fear, Sistar admitted. Our predictive models suggested humans would eventually surpass Draconians. Some in our military could not accept this. They decided to eliminate the threat before it fully emerged. And the reinforcement fleet? John asked. Knows nothing of this. They believe you unprovokedly destroyed our ships. They come seeking vengeance, not justice. Susan exchanged glances with her team. We've established communication with Admiral Krazathul. We're working on bringing the lost fleet back. Sistar's eyes widened. They live? In another dimension, being attacked by something we don't understand. The Draconian considered this. I must speak with Krazathul. He must tell the reinforcement fleet the truth. In the laboratory below, Lisa and John had finally managed to create a stable visual, linked to the other dimension. Admiral Krazathul's face appeared on their screen, looking haggard and worn. Earth forces, he began, then stopped when he saw Vice Admiral Sistar enter the frame. Traitor, Sistar hissed. You disobeyed Imperial orders. Krazathul's eyes narrowed. I did what was necessary for our people's survival. By starting an unauthorized war? Sistar demanded. The reinforcement fleet comes to avenge you. They will destroy Earth and trigger a galactic conflict. Susan stepped between them. We don't have time for this. Admiral Krazathul, we believe we can bring your fleet back. But we need to know, what are those entities attacking you? Krazathul seemed to age before their eyes. We do not know. They seem native to this dimensional plane. They feed on energy, technological, biological, all forms. They have destroyed 57 of my ships and killed thousands of my soldiers. And if we bring you back? Susan asked. What then? Then I will stand down my fleet, Krasthul said firmly, and I will tell the truth to the Empire and the Galactic Council. The humans defended themselves against an illegal aggression. They then showed mercy by saving their would-be destroyers. Susan studied his face, looking for deception. Why should we trust you? Because I have seen what lies between realities, Krasthul said quietly. It has changed my perspective, and because the alternative is that we all die. You by the reinforcement, fleet. Us by the entities here. The communication link began to break up. Lisa worked frantically to stabilize it. The entities are attacking their transmission equipment, she reported. We're losing them. Susan made her decision. Prepare the quantum array, full power, we're bringing them back. Admiral, John protested, we can't be sure they'll keep their word. We can be sure the reinforcement fleet won't, Susan countered. At least this way we have a chance. Preparations moved at frantic speed. The quantum array, once a small research project, now filled an entire underground chamber. Earth had poured resources into understanding what had happened 6 months ago. Susan stood with her team as Olivia initiated the power-up sequence. The array hummed, then roared, drawing massive amounts of energy from power plants across the planet. Lights dimmed worldwide as power was diverted. Gateway forming, Olivia reported, her voice tight with concentration. Dimensional barrier thinning. On the main screen, they watched as a patch of space near Earth began to shimmer and distort. It stretched and pulled until it tore open like a wound in reality itself. Beyond the tear was not stars, but swirling gray mists, signaled the Draconian. Fleet, Susan ordered. Guide them home. Alan transmitted the navigation data. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then emerging from the gray like ghosts, the massive shapes of Draconian warships began to appear. They came through damaged and scarred, far different from the threatening armada that had arrived 6 months before. Some limped on failing engines. Others were towed by larger vessels, but they weren't alone. Something's following them, Lisa said, pointing to dark shapes moving in the mists behind the ships. The entities, John realized, they're following the fleet through. Susan turned to Olivia. Can we close the gateway? Not yet, Olivia said. Too many ships still inside. If we close it now, we'll cut them in half. Susan watched as more shapes moved toward the gateway. They had opened a door between worlds. Now they might have doomed Earth to a threat worse than the Draconians had ever been. The shadow creatures poured through the gateway like oil spilling into water. They had no fixed shape, flowing and changing as they moved. Where they touched the returning Draconian ships, metal corroded instantly. Close it now, Susan shouted. Olivia's hands flew across her control panel. 15 ships still in transit. We can't wait, John insisted, pointing at the spreading shadows. Those things will destroy everything they touch. Susan grabbed the communication link. Admiral Krasthul, accelerate remaining ships. We must close the gateway immediately. On the main screen, they watched the remaining Draconian vessels surge forward, engines glowing dangerously bright. Behind them, the shadow entities seemed to realize what was happening. They moved faster, stretching themselves thin to reach the gateway. 5 ships left, Olivia counted down. 4, 3. The final ships pushed through, trailing damage from the entity's touch. As the last vessel cleared the gateway, Olivia slammed her hand on the emergency shutdown. The quantum array screamed. In protest, power surging and circuits burning out. The gateway began to shrink, its edges closing inward. Most of the shadow entities were still on the other side, but at least a dozen had made it through and now drifted in Earth orbit. Gateway closed, Olivia reported, slumping in exhaustion. Susan stared at the screen. And the entities that got through? Spreading out, Alan confirmed, moving toward our satellites and the Draconian ships. Susan turned to Vice Admiral Scifistories. Your ships need to raise shields or whatever defenses you have. Those things destroyed 57 of your vessels in the other dimension. Scifistories was already sending orders to the fleet. Our technology had limited effect against them before. We need to understand what they are, Lisa said. If we could capture one. No, came a firm voice from the doorway. Admiral Krazathul had arrived, escorted by Earth security forces. He looked different in person than on the screen, larger, his scales duller, with visible wounds across his face and arms. Those entities cannot be contained or studied, he continued. They feed on energy itself. Any field used to trap them becomes their food. Susan studied the Draconian admiral. Then how do we stop them? On my ship, we discovered, they avoid certain radiation frequencies, Krazathul explained. We use this to protect our most vital systems. Lisa was already inputting data into her tablet. What frequencies? As the scientists worked frantically to develop a defense, Susan faced Krazathul directly. You promised to stand down your fleet and tell the truth. The reinforcement fleet arrives in less than 48 hours. Krazathul nodded slowly. I will keep my word, Admiral Miller. My fleet is in no condition to fight anyway. He gestured to the screen showing his damaged ships. But you should know, the commander of the reinforcement fleet is my brother. He may not believe me. Family dispute? Paul asked. Family honor, Krazathul corrected. In Draconian culture, family is everything. My actions have dishonored mine. My brother comes not just for vengeance, but to restore our family name. Outside Earth's atmosphere, the shadow entities had begun attacking satellites and space stations. They moved with purpose now, seeming to target communication equipment first. They're cutting us off, Alan realized, just like they did to the Draconian fleet in the other dimension. Prepare planetary defense systems, Susan ordered, and get me the Galactic Council. They abandoned us before. Let's see if they'll help now that we have witnesses to what happened. The Council, however, remained cautious. Inquisitor Zorlak's face appeared on the communication screen, showing no emotion. The Council acknowledges your communication, Admiral Miller, the Inquisitor said. However, we cannot intervene in what appears to be an internal Draconian matter. Internal? Susan exploded. We have interdimensional entities attacking Earth, and a Draconian fleet coming to destroy us over a mistake. How is this internal? Zorlak tilted its head. The Council observes that Earth has demonstrated previously unknown capabilities. Perhaps you should use those capabilities again. The communication ended abruptly. They're afraid, Paul explained. First we made a Draconian fleet disappear. Now we brought them back. The Council doesn't want to get involved with a species that can do that. Susan turned to Lisa and John. Any progress on those frequencies? Lisa nodded. We've isolated 3 specific radiation bands that the entities seem to avoid. We can modify our defense satellites to broadcast them. Do it, Susan ordered. And prepare the quantum array for another use. If we can't defeat the reinforcement fleet, we may have to send them away too. Olivia looked up from her damaged equipment. The array is severely damaged. Repairing it will take days, maybe weeks. We don't have weeks, Susan reminded her. We barely have days. There may be another way, Krazathul said quietly. Everyone turned to him. The ancient technology the Council believes exists beneath your planet's surface. If it exists, it might help. Susan frowned. We found no evidence of such technology. You weren't looking correctly, Krazathul insisted. The quantum array was built over a site with unusual properties. This is why it affected our ships as it did. The array itself is not powerful enough to create dimensional gateways. It merely activated something much older. Lisa and John exchanged glances. The mineral formations, Lisa said. We thought they were natural. They're not, Krazathul said. They are remnants of a civilization that existed long before any current galactic power. My people have legends of them. The Forerunners, we call them. Susan didn't have time for ancient history lessons. Can these remnants help us now? Possibly, Krazathul said. But we would need to fully activate them, not just trigger them accidentally as you did before. Susan looked at her team, then back to the Draconian admiral. Show us. Beneath the quantum array facility, Krazathul led a small team through narrow passages. His large form barely fit in the human-sized corridors. Here, he said finally. stopping before what looked like an ordinary rock wall. Behind this, John scanned the wall with equipment. He's right. There's a cavity behind here, and strange energy readings. How do we open it? Susan asked. Krazathul placed his scaled hand against the rock. In our legends, the Forerunners responded to thought as much as touch. Their technology was linked to consciousness itself. To everyone's surprise, the wall began to glow where his hand touched it. Lines of light spread outward, forming intricate patterns across the surface. With a low rumble, the rock face simply vanished, revealing a chamber beyond. The room was perfectly circular, its walls covered in the same glowing patterns. In the center stood a pedestal with a spherical object hovering above it. "What is it?" Susan asked, her voice hushed. "A key," Krazathul said reverently. "A key to powers my people once sought but never found. This is why Earth was marked for destruction. Not because of what you might become, but because of what you unknowingly possess." Above them, the shadow entities continued their attack on Earth's orbital defenses, and beyond, the Draconian reinforcement fleet drew ever closer. But in this ancient chamber, buried beneath the surface, they had found something that might change everything. Susan looked at the floating sphere, then at Krazathul. "How do we use it?" The Draconian admiral's eyes reflected the strange light. "That Admiral Miller is what we must discover, and quickly." The ancient chamber hummed with energy as Susan, Lisa, John, and Krazathul stood around the floating sphere. Its surface shifted like liquid metal, reflecting their faces in distorted waves. "Our scientists have 12 hours before the reinforcement fleet arrives," Susan said. "What do we know about this technology?" Lisa studied her readings. "It's generating energy patterns similar to our quantum array, but thousands of times more powerful, and it's responding to our presence." "To our thoughts," Krazathul corrected. "The legends say the Forerunners linked their technology to consciousness itself." John frowned. "You mean it reads minds?" "More like it responds to intent," Krazathul explained. "The stronger the will, the stronger the response." Susan approached the sphere cautiously. "So what happens if I intend to save Earth?" Before anyone could answer, alarms blared through their communication devices. Alan's voice came through, tight with urgency. "Admiral, the shadow entities have destroyed our orbital defense grid. They're moving towards the surface, and the Draconian reinforcement fleet has accelerated again. New arrival time, 3 hours. The situation was deteriorating faster than expected." Susan turned to Krazathul. "We're out of time for research. We need to act now." The Draconian admiral nodded gravely. "I will attempt to contact my brother. Perhaps he will listen to reason." "And if he doesn't?" Krazathul's scaled face showed no emotion. "Then we must use this." He gestured to the sphere. "But be warned, such power always comes with a price." While Krazathul returned to the surface to contact the approaching fleet, Susan, Lisa, and John remained in the ancient chamber, trying to understand the technology. Lisa placed her hand near the sphere without touching it. "It responds differently, to each of us." When Krazathul approached, it showed images of his homeworld. "When I approach, I see star charts I've never encountered before." John stood back, arms crossed. "I don't trust it. Anything this powerful hidden under Earth? Why didn't we find it before?" "Maybe we weren't ready," Susan suggested. "Or maybe we didn't need it until now." On the surface, things grew worse by the minute. The shadow entities had begun descending through the atmosphere, leaving trails of decay wherever they passed. The modified radiation broadcast slowed them but couldn't stop them completely. Krazathul's attempt to contact his brother met with hostility. "You dishonor our family and our empire," Commander Krasvar said, his image filling the main screen, in Earth's defense headquarters. "You will be brought home for judgment, and the humans will pay for their interference." "They saved us," Krazathul argued. "Without them, we would all be dead in that other dimension." Krasvar's eyes narrowed. "So you claim. Our sensors show your fleet is damaged beyond repair. This fits with our belief that the humans possessed a weapon powerful enough to cripple you. Brother, listen. The time for talking is over. Krasvar interrupted. We arrive in 2 hours. Be ready to surrender or be destroyed with the humans. The communication ended abruptly. In the ancient chamber, the sphere began pulsing with light, as if responding to the increased danger. Susan reached out and placed her palm directly on its surface. The liquid metal parted beneath her touch, warm but not hot. Instantly, her mind filled with images: Earth seen from space, the approaching Draconian fleet, the shadow entities spreading across the planet. Then deeper images: the history of the Forerunners, their rise and mysterious disappearance, the technology they left behind as a safeguard. She pulled her hand away, gasping. I know what it does, she said, and what it's meant for. Lisa and John helped her to her feet. What did you see? Lisa asked. Everything, Susan replied. This technology wasn't left as a weapon. It was left as a shield. The Forerunners knew other dimensions existed, and they knew what lived in those spaces between realities. They built this to protect Earth. Then why didn't it activate when the shadow entities arrived? John asked. Because it needs a guide, Susan explained. A consciousness to direct it. It needs to be told what to defend against. Susan ordered everyone to the surface. In the command center, they found chaos. Reports streamed in from around the world of shadow entities, touching down, dissolving anything they contacted. Krasthul's damaged fleet had positioned itself between Earth and the approaching reinforcements, but they were too few and too damaged to make a difference. We have 1 hour, Alan reported grimly. Susan turned to Olivia. Can you connect the quantum array to the ancient chamber? Olivia looked doubtful. Maybe, but the array is still badly damaged. It doesn't need to work, Susan explained. It just needs to connect to the power source. The sphere will do the rest. As engineers worked frantically to establish the connection, Susan gathered her team and the Draconian admirals. The plan is simple, she said. We use the sphere to create a protective field around Earth. It should repel the shadow entities and prevent the reinforcement fleet from attacking. Should? Vice Admiral Sisisthar questioned. It's all we have, Susan replied simply. Krasthul stepped forward. I will return to my ships. My fleet will draw the entities away from Earth's surface, giving you time to activate this defense. Susan studied him. Why help us, really? The Draconian's amber eyes met hers, because in that other dimension, I saw what happens when civilizations fail to work together against greater threats. The entities there weren't always hunters. They were once like us, before they destroyed themselves through conflict. With 30 minutes remaining, everything was in place. The quantum array had been connected to the ancient chamber. Susan stood before the sphere, her team around her. The Forerunners designed this to respond to clear intent, she explained. I need to touch it and focus on protecting Earth from both threats. Be careful, Lisa warned. That much power flowing through one mind. Susan nodded, then placed both hands on the sphere. This time, the liquid metal enveloped her hands completely. Her eyes widened, then began to glow with the same light as the sphere. Above Earth, the shadow entities suddenly stopped their descent. The approaching Draconian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, now visible in normal space. They immediately launched fighters and began targeting Earth's surface. But before any weapons could fire, a shimmer spread around the planet. It started at the quantum array facility and expanded rapidly, a transparent dome of energy that engulfed the entire Earth. Where it touched shadow entities, they dissolved into nothing. When Draconian weapons struck it, the energy was absorbed and redistributed. In the ancient chamber, Susan stood transfixed, the sphere's light flowing through her. Through her connection, she could see everything, the shadow entities being pushed back into their dimension, the Draconian fleet unable to penetrate the shield, the people of Earth looking up in wonder at the glowing sky. It's working, Lisa breathed, watching the readings on her tablet. The shield is stable. In space, Commander Krasvar ordered his fleet to continue the attack, but nothing could breach the shield. Meanwhile, Krasthul's damaged vessels moved to surround his brother's command ship. Enough, Krasthul transmitted to his brother. The humans have technology from the Forerunners themselves. We cannot defeat them, but more importantly, we should not try. They saved us when they could have let us die. Slowly, the firing stopped. The Galactic Council ships, which had been observing from a distance, moved closer. Inquisitor Zorlak requested permission to approach Earth. In the chamber, Susan finally removed her hands from the sphere. The shield remained in place, now self-sustaining. She looked exhausted but satisfied. The entities are gone, she confirmed, pushed back to their dimension, and the Draconian fleet has stopped attacking. What now? John asked. Susan smiled tiredly. Now we talk, like civilized species should have done from the beginning. 3 days later, representatives from the Galactic Council, both Draconian, fleets and Earth met in a historic first official contact. The Council formally welcomed Earth as a protected species with special status due to their connection to Forerunner technology. Commander Krasvar, after seeing the evidence, acknowledged his brother's claims and withdrew the reinforcement fleet. The truth about the unauthorized attack on Earth would be revealed to the Empire. As the diplomatic proceedings continued, Susan stood with Lisa and John, watching ships from a dozen different species orbit peacefully above Earth. Everything's changed, Lisa said. We're not alone anymore. We never were, Susan replied, thinking of the ancient technology beneath their feet. We just didn't know it. John looked up at the stars, now filled with new possibilities and new dangers. So what happens next? Susan smiled. We explore. We learn. We make sure no one ever thinks of Earth as an easy target again. Above them, the shield had faded to invisibility, but remained active, a testament to humanity's unexpected entry onto the galactic stage. The Draconian armada had disappeared on Earth, and in solving that mystery, humanity had found its place among the stars.